Oh, hello, hello, hello. Welcome back into another edition of Strategies for Living here on 1017 FM and 710 Keel. I'm marriage and family therapist David McMillan, the ace of the airwaves, keeping us flying. I'm going to you first, Ruben Wright.
Oh, sure. I'm honored.
Yeah, but look, do you see what I see? Do you see what I see? She's doing it to me again. Can you believe this? You know the kind of day I've had, Ruben.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just in the few minutes you've been in here,
Yeah.
it sounded
Yeah.
like a
Yeah.
rough day.
Yeah.
But and then to come in
And then
and
to
see
come
that.
into this, yeah.
It's the radio show Gremlins.
You
Yeah.
think you're blaming? So you're blaming right now, aren't you? PLPC, Carla McCormick, welcome.
Howdy, folks.
And I don't know whether you've got the cameras on or not, and whether people can actually see.
I do have the cameras on right now.
Yeah,
as a
and
matter of
it's
fact.
just it's Keel and Robert and Erin to remind us all that they're on between 6 a.m. and 9 a.m. It's up there right in front of me, but it's just whopper jawed. And
I don't know. It ends up that way so often that I have to think it's on purpose.
yeah, I think Carla comes in and she says, "Okay, I'm really going to mess with his OCD today." Yeah, so.
She just has nothing better to do.
Maybe that relates to what we're talking about thoughts and feelings and emotions this week on Strategies for Living Right.
Yes,
So
we
maybe she is, let's give her the benefit of the doubt.
Sure.
Okay. Maybe she is setting us up, segueing us to set up what we're going to talk about this evening. Do you think that's possible?
I think it might be possible.
Okay, because we're going to talk about keeping things in perspective with cognitive therapy, because we are talking about cognitive, it's about the thinking, right? And we probably won't have time to get to this tonight, but maybe we'll see how far we get. If not, we'll move into tomorrow evening. We will talk about building self-confidence and self-esteem.
So, keeping things in perspective, is that how not to turn a molehill into a mountain?
What is she saying?
I can't.
Just
Yeah,
wondering.
yeah.
Molehill into a mountain.
Folks, thank you for tuning into Strategies for Living. We are brought to you by CADA, the Council on Alcoholism and Drug Abuse of Northwest Louisiana. We are also brought to you by Resilient House. We're brought to you by Milestones Counseling Center, by Jerry Anderson State Farm Insurance, by Learning RX, by Highland Place Rehab and Nursing Center, and by Jacobs Well Inspirational Books and Gifts. I'm going to do my best during the break to keep all of this in perspective, but I don't know. We'll see. If we're talking addiction prevention, education, and treatment in Shreveport-Bossier for 60 years, we're talking about CADA. Let's talk about addiction. Let's talk about treatment. Let's talk about getting your life back. The Council on Alcoholism and Drug Abuse, CADA, has been helping individuals and families in Shreveport and Bossier City for 60 years now. CADA provides intensive residential treatment as well as outpatient services too. CADA treats women Hey, welcome back. Welcome back into Strategies for Living. Marriage and family therapist David McMillan, PLPC Carla McCormick, and we're here on Strategies for Living on 101.7 FM and 710 KEEL, and we're talking about thoughts and feelings. What's a thought? What's a feeling? What's the difference? All week, and so we're continuing that conversation today with how to keep things in perspective and some help from cognitive therapy, perhaps. Epictetus. Do you know that name? That philosopher?
He was, yeah, but I don't know about him.
About 1900 years ago. In fact, this is a quote. Men are disturbed not by things, but by the views which they take of them. And Epictetus lived between the year 55 and 135, so some 1900 years ago. He stated that profound truth. But it's only been in the last, I guess, 3 or 4 decades that insight has been developed, Carla, into a type of therapy, and we call it cognitive therapy. It's probably one of the most important advances. If we look at psychology and think of practical psychology, this is important. Dr. Albert Ellis, the late Dr. Albert Ellis, Dr. Erin Beck, are the two who separately, not together, but separately developed what we know now, what we call cognitive therapy, or CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. And so we're gonna talk about just some fundamentals of it today, because you can use cognitive therapy to change your perspectives that are having a negative effect on your feelings and what you do, your actions. And of course, we're using your thoughts to do that.
Stinking thinking.
Yeah, you use the thoughts to change the feelings and the actions, and the methods kind of will that you can tackle a whole range of issues and problems that affect your mood. We're talking everything from depression, anxiety, anger. All of those can be addressed with cognitive therapy, and they affect certainly what we do. They affect our behavior, and also things like how we strive for success, how we eat. Do I eat too much? Do I eat too little? Do I avoid social situations? So this is a major form of psychotherapy, but you don't have to be a psychotherapist to understand how to use cognitive therapy in your life. And in fact, a good cognitive therapist will teach you how to take this out of the room and use it in your everyday life. Do you use a lot of cognitive therapy in what you do, don't you? Yeah.
Yeah, I do. And I love that point that once you learn how to do it, it's something it's a skill you can use on yourself, for yourself.
Absolutely. Now, cognitive therapy as a whole is built on some principles, some key principles. The first is to understand that the viewpoint you choose is vital to your mood, and you choose it. I'm using the word choose because your viewpoint is to a large extent a matter of choice, and that was the philosopher Epictetus's point. And now the next principle involves understanding how the mood and the thought are linked. You change one and you also change the other. And then the third thing is you learn how to work on your thoughts and beliefs. And the methods of cognitive therapy, therefore, if you do the work, will improve your mood. They work directly on your thinking, and by changing your thinking, you improve your mood, you improve your feeling. So if you're going to do cognitive therapy, if you've got to be willing to ask yourself, is there another way of looking at this? Is there another way of seeing this? That's vital.
And there always is. And the answer is always yes.
Yes, yes. If you visit a new place, or you take a journey in a new country, you're going to accumulate impressions of what you see. You're going to develop your own point of view. You draw conclusions. The people here are really friendly. You're going to form opinions. Gosh, life here is so much less stressful than at home. You're going to develop your own personal picture of the place, and you're going to compare it with pictures that others have developed. And that's all going to really be part of your pleasures of traveling, right? And each of us develops our own point of view shaped on that experience.
And that's why we experience different things.
Yeah. We use our own viewpoint, our own perspective as a basis of our conclusions and our opinions. So, one of the things that if we're going to practice this, we have to understand, you just said it, there's always, you use that A word, that always word that we therapists sometimes say, hey, be careful when you use that word. But in this case, there is always more than one way of seeing things. A lot of times I will say to couples and individuals, but I say it a lot to couples just simply because, our ego convinces us that we're seeing it the right way. Right.
Right.
Yeah, and I'm seeing it the only way. I can't see how you and Ruben could possibly be seeing, this different from me, because I know I'm seeing it the right way. Right?
Yes.
Yeah. Give me an amen, Ruben.
Hallelujah.
Yeah. There you go. See. But there is always more than one way of seeing things. Always. But I have to be open to that. I have to keep if I'm going to use this, I have to keep an open mind. I often say to couples, none of us see the world as it is. It's impossible to see the world as it is. We see the world as we are.
Based on our experiences, and
we have a history. We were born into a family. We were born into a certain culture. That culture may have taught us several beliefs. Maybe there was a religion involved in that. In any case, on the show here, we often talk about the ego, our operating system. It's like the DOS that runs, in the background of everything. And that gets installed very, very young. There are beliefs that are installed really, and they're solid by the time we're 4 years old, 3 years old, 4 years old,
and really solid by the time you're 6 or
yeah,
7.
Yeah, and sometimes we will. Some of us won't question some of those for a long, long time, if ever. Well,
we'll only question them if we become uncomfortable with them.
Yeah.
Or if something hurts.
Yeah. So, we're not talking about, some form of just cockeyed optimism here. And I'm not suggesting, you and I are not suggesting that whatever the circumstances, just look on the bright side. That's not what we're talking about here. But we're talking about, can I see this from a different place? What are the different possibilities that I can see the same experience from?
Well, what I think you're saying, and what an easy way to say it is, you've got to get out of that black and white thinking. There are more ways of thinking than my way and the wrong way.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes all of us or have times in our lives where we think we're so right that the other person has to be wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. And so one of the things that we have to do, I think, is we have to get into a stance of, and our egos. We have to be aware that the ego is there, so that we can kind of step back and even just observe it, look at it, see it. Um, so we have to know it's there, and we have to know that it is going to operate, and it's going to try to convince us that the right, it's black and white. The way I'm seeing it is right, but you have a way that you're seeing it. Reuben has a way he's seeing it. If we're in a room of 100 people, there may be 100 different ways that people are experiencing the exact same thing. So we don't see the world as it is. We see the world as we are.
Well, and that's about perspective, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, that's that. Have you seen that meme where somebody's looking at the number 9, and I hold the paper down, and to you it's a 6, and to me it's a 9.
Yeah.
You
I
know?
hadn't seen it, but it makes sense.
And that's just a matter. We're looking at the same thing, but it's a matter of perspective. I think that's a really good way to explain perspective.
Yeah. So we're going to come back. We're going to talk about what's the link. We'll review something that we talked about yesterday. What's the link between our feelings and our thoughts? Because if we're talking about cognitive therapy, we got to review very quickly what's feeling, what's thought, what's the difference, and how does this all come into play. And then we're going to talk about how do we work on our thoughts and our beliefs. What are some steps we can actually take? We'll talk about maybe some crooked thinking, some kinds of crooked thinking, and this will help us to maybe see things in a different way, because many times our thoughts can get very crooked. And so we'll tackle all of that and more as we look at how cognitive therapy can help us solve some problems here on Strategies.
On the horizon, over two young lovers, while it's going down. Well, that'll be the day when you say goodbye. Yes, that'll be the day.
And welcome back. Welcome back into Strategies for a Living here on 101.7 FM and 710 KEEL. Welcome back. PLPC Carla McCormick, marriage and family therapist David McMillan. We are keeping things in perspective this evening here on Strategies with a little help from cognitive therapy. And so we're talking that we don't see the world as it is. We see the world as we are. So there's always a different way we can look at things. So the links between our feelings and our thoughts and our emotions. What's feeling, what's thought, what's the difference? Our feelings are physical sensations in our body. Our feelings, at birth, we can feel. Now, we learn then, over time, we develop the ability as our brain, the brain development allows us to think, to have cognition, then we have a feeling thought cycle that forms. And we said, you and I said, I think it was Monday, that a lot of the times what we call feelings are really thoughts that label feelings. And there's that, like hungry.
Right. Hungry
is a label for what's going on in your body. The actual feeling of hunger is what's happening in your body, the physical sensation. But it's so much easier to put a label on it and say, I'm hungry, and or you get hangry.
I do get hangry.
but you put a label on it. Now I can understand. I can communicate, very easily. And there's that feeling thought cycle. So just a practical example of how this can happen: feeling thought, feeling thought, feeling thought, feeling thought. Let's talk about a depressed cycle. So that meeting that we just went to, Carla, was a complete waste of time. That's what I think. And then I'm feeling just so frustrated, fed up. Okay. And that leads me to the thought, well, a lot of it was my fault, which then leads me to feel miserable. And I seem to be losing my grip. I can't run a meeting anymore, which then leads me to being sad and worried. And that leads me to the thought, well, I'm completely useless, and that leads to just feeling utterly miserable, and so on and so on and so on. But you see the cycle, right?
Yes.
And that's how a depressed cycle can, feeling thought, feeling thought, feeling thought, feeling thought. And that can get to going about 1 million miles an hour, it feels like. And to the extent, to the max, that's a panic or anxiety attack.
Well, then you can throw in feeling, thought, behavior. Now I'm a piece of waste.
Yes.
My life is not worth living. Never mind, I'm just going to drink this bottle of whiskey. Forget it.
There you go.
So now we've got feeling, thought, behavior.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times you'll bounce around between feeling, thought, feeling, thought, feeling, thought, feeling, thought, and then feeling, thought, behavior.
Right. And you're right. Our feelings and our thinking directly influence what we do, and directly influence. And that's another reason it's so vital, so important to understand this. Whether you go to a therapist or not, it's very important for us to all get this. Let's give another quick example of, let's say, the last illustration was a depressed cycle. Let's talk about an anxious cycle. So again, the big meeting. I haven't had the meeting yet. The big meeting is today, and I have a feeling of being apprehensive. Because it's today. I'll never manage to make my points clearly. I won't be able to get across what I need to get across. So now I'm worried. They're going to think I'm an idiot. Especially Carla, she's going to be out there judging me, and she'll think I'm an idiot. Now I'm highly anxious. Now I'm really anxious, and it's going to be a total disaster. This is going to be horrible. This is going to be terrible. Now I'm panicky. You see how it goes, and so on and so on and so on, and that may, again, at any point in time, I might jump out there and say, well, I'm just getting in my car and going home. I'm not doing this meeting today.
Or you may go ahead and do the meeting and do a poor job because you're so nervous, and then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Or I might go find my Xanax bottle
Yeah.
and take one too many,
Right.
and then I'm not coherent in the meeting, or take some other substance. I don't want to overly pick on Xanax,
Yeah.
or, the benzodiazepines that help so many of us. But you get my point, and your point of that feeling thought cycle. Oftentimes we try to interrupt it with doing something, but the problem is we're doing something based on some problematic thinking, some problematic thoughts. So how do we begin to break that? How do we begin to think differently, to adopt another point of view? And if I do that, then I feel differently. Let's give a quick example of this. Okay, so this is a very, very simple thing. I opened the window this morning. It's raining, and it leads to a feeling of sadness and depression, because and it's not the rain. The rain is just the event that's happening. But I might think the rain is causing me to be sad and depressed because I open the window and see the rain. I have a golf game scheduled with Ruben. I've really been looking forward to getting Ruben out on the golf course, right?
Right.
Because I know what I can do. I'm not a great golfer at all, but I know that what I can do with Ruben on the golf course.
And I'm pretty excited that it's raining, so I don't have to get embarrassed.
There you go. There you go. Right there. That's it. Because so it's not the rain. It's not the rain that causes the feeling in either Ruben or I. It's what we both think about the rain.
Right.
All right. So that's empowering. So Dr. Albert Ellis, as we mentioned earlier, uses an A, B, C, D, E model. So the A is the event. It's the rain. The B is what I'm thinking about the rain, what Ruben's thinking about the rain. I'm sad and, I hate it that it's raining. Ruben opens the window. I love it that it's raining. I don't have to go endure the golf game with McMillan. All right. And so we have very different feelings. Mm-hmm. In my case, I'm sad. And so if I want to change that, then I've got to do the D, which is I've got to dispute the feeling. Maybe there's another way to look at this. You said earlier, there's always a different way to look at it. Well, maybe a different way to look at it is, I probably didn't want to embarrass Ruben. I know that he's not a great golfer,
I really needed to clean my house and go grocery shopping today anyway.
There you go. And so I might still be a little agitated, but agitated may be a little better than sadness and depressed,
Or
right?
disappointed.
Or disappointed, yeah. Disappointed may be a little better than just
Depressed.
down in the dumps, sad and depressed. So you see how this works. You're not trying to, again, it's not a, everybody's happy, overly optimistic. It's working with, what you have and looking at what are the problematic thoughts. What
Okay.
do I need to be willing to change?
Go back over that again for people, because in case they missed it. The A is what?
The A is the activating event. So the event, whatever
the
is
rain.
happening, whatever, in our illustration, it's the rain.
Okay.
It's the A is the activating event. B is what there's going to be for each one of us a thought that's associated with every activating event. At least one, probably multiple, but at least one. So what thought immediately occurs when I see the activating event? And then what feeling results from that? We think oftentimes that the event causes the feeling, but it doesn't. It never does. It's what I think about the event that determines the feeling. So that's the ABC.
So is it fair to say that there's always a thought before a feeling?
I don't know that it's fair to that's the chicken and the egg, because no, I don't think so. I don't think it's fair to say that. Oftentimes there is, but again, if we look at just brain development, if we go in and we look at brain develops the feeling in the brain develops first. It's the early warning system, and then we develop an ability to label that, to cognize that.
Gotcha.
Now, as the brain fully develops, I think the answer is yes. A thought can many times precede a feeling, but I don't think that's an always. I don't think that's all the time. That makes sense.
Yes.
Just simply from a brain development. point of view.
Yes, it makes a lot. So a baby can feel cold and have a feeling.
Right.
But
And
there's
baby
no
doesn't
thought
have the
behind
ability.
it.
No, what's going to happen when a baby who doesn't have the ability to label, to cognize, to think, it's just going to cry or let its caregivers know by whimpering, crying, that something's going on.
Right.
Yeah. So what are the key questions here that we've got to do? We've got to be able to identify and when we have problematic thoughts. So I've got to become curious, and I've got to become a student of myself, which means I've got to step out of the expert status that our ego would like to convince us that we are, right?
How do you know when a thought is problematic?
Well, when the resulting feeling is unpleasant, I don't like it, it's hurtful, hurts me, hurts somebody else, that's when I know. Okay? I need to ask myself, what went through my mind? How am I seeing things right now? What is it about this that really matters to me? What does this event or situation mean to me? And what does it mean or say about me? Those are kind of beginning questions to help identify what are some of the problematic thoughts. And there are some, we mentioned earlier, there's some crooked thinking that we can go down. And so we'll talk about some of that crooked thinking, but ultimately we have to look for other perspectives. We have to look for the alternative. And, we have to question our thoughts. We have to question our reality. Ultimately, question the crooked thinking and question how we're coping. A lot of questions, right?
Yeah,
You got to get curious. You got to get curious.
Well, you have to. I like when you say you have to become a student of your own thoughts.
Yeah. You got to get out of the expert status because our ego would have us believe, well, you know this to be true, and yet you pointed out to us, no, we don't. There's always another way to look at this. Yeah. Talking about thoughts and feelings. During this week, today, we're talking about how keeping things in perspective, how we can keep things in perspective and use our minds, our thoughts, cognitive therapy to do that. Here on Strategies. We'll be back. Welcome back. Welcome back into Strategies for Living. PLPC Carla McCormick, marriage and family therapist David McMillan, and we are talking about keeping things in perspective today, using cognitive therapy and how we do that during this feeling and thought week here on Strategies for Living. Thanks for listening, folks. So let's talk about some different ways of how our thinking can get crooked. Carla, there's a lot of these. We won't go through all of them because we don't have time, and we've been through some of them before. But let's just throw out some of the ways that our thinking can go crooked. One of my very favorites, and I loved to do this, still do from time to time, catastrophizing.
I can't even say the word.
Catastrophizing.
Catastrophizing.
Yeah. So, what this is, it's going to the worst possible outcome. If something goes wrong, it's going to be a disaster. Every little twinge is a sign of a serious illness. Every twinge in my body, it must be the big one. You remember Red Fox, Sanford and Son?
Yeah.
It's the big one. I'm going. Every frown is, he's totally rejecting me, catastrophizing. I'll lose control completely. I'll totally lose control, and Ruben won't be able to get to the dump button quick enough, and the FCC will
shut us down,
fine me $1 gajillion, and that'll be that, right? Catastrophizing. That's one of my favorites. Do you have a favorite?
How about overgeneralizing?
Oh,
you always do this,
yeah.
And you never do that.
Yeah, and that human beings don't do much always and never, and so we got to remember that those are generally very that most people will get defensive.
What's the saying? You shouldn't use words like always and never because it's almost always never true.
Oh, I like it. I hadn't heard that, but I like it.
Something like that.
Yeah. Exaggeration, giving negative events more importance than they really deserve, and positive events less importance. I'll never get over this, no matter what it is. I'll never get over this.
She gave me an evil look. She hates me.
Yeah. I can't, I'm not going to be able to bear it. That's an exaggeration, because, and how we speak to ourselves, how we talk to ourselves, because we've all got an ongoing narrative in our minds, in our thinking. And we really need to tune into it. We really need to be aware of it, that it's there. How we talk to ourselves is going to influence our moods and how we feel. Right?
I oftentimes make clients keep a tally mark record of how often they say something negative to themselves.
Yeah. And
they are often very surprised at how many tally marks go on that page.
Another one of these is, and this is especially true. We're talking types of crooked thinking. Mind reading, and this happens a lot in couples, especially.
It happens everywhere.
Yeah, but you believe that you know what somebody is thinking. So Carla knows I've made a complete mess of this, and I know she's thinking that.
Well, or David and I have an argument, and I get caught in traffic, and I'm late for the show, and he says, "I know she did that on purpose because she's mad at me." Exactly.
So that mind reading, and that also kind of melds into fortune telling, predicting the future. Everything is bound to go wrong here. I won't be. I will if Carla leaves, I won't be able to handle this on my own. I can't do it on my own.
Ruben and I say that every night. We can't do the show without David.
Another one is black and white thinking.
We were just talking about that.
Yeah, we were. Going one extreme to another. If I can't get this, if I can't do this right, if I can't make this work, I just may as well give up. That's black and white. Yeah. If you can say that, then our relationship means nothing at all. That's very black and white thinking. Taking things personally. They didn't ask me because they don't like me. You know, if someone asks you to do something differently, well, you're criticizing me. You know, so.
Or if you don't go to the dinner party, they don't like me, or they're mad at me. I will tell you guys, if you are one of these people who is oversensitive and takes everything personally and everything is about you, you need to take a long, hard look at yourself, because for me, gosh, that is such a self-defeating, demoralizing, agonizing way to live.
Yeah, yeah. And there is a better way.
Oh gosh,
There's another way.
Yes, there's always a better way.
Yeah. So I have to go to the alternative. I have to look for other perspectives here. You might even want to start an alternative diary. You can take a piece of paper. You can do it in a diary book, or you can just do it on a notebook, or it's an alternative diary. 2 columns, one for the thoughts and the other for the alternative points of view. So, it helps you begin to see, okay, there is another way to think about this.
Well, and you can do, another exercise is, what would you tell yourself? If you were...
Ooh, I like that.
If I was my friend and I heard myself saying that, what would I say to me?
Yeah, yeah. Many times therapists use some variation of that. We call it the empty chair.
Yeah.
So, okay, really listen to what you're saying. Now get in the other chair and be be that person you're talking to. Or in your example, okay, be a friend of yours. Talk to you. What would you say if you just heard you say that? Yeah. So,
And that's a good way to practice being nice to yourself too.
Yeah, yeah. So, so look for alternative ways. Maybe look at the evidence. Look at the evidence of what you're believing to be true. Look for other points of view. Just be open. Be curious. And you might even ask yourself, if I think differently about this, what's the worst thing that could possibly happen?
Well, so if you've got behavior, let's see, thought, feeling, behavior. Thought,
Right.
feeling, behavior.
Right.
Can I change any one of those 3 and
think
change the outcome of...
That's the beauty of once the brain develops. Yeah, all 3 of those are related. So if I intervene on one, I'm going to affect the other. AA has a lot of sayings about, fake it till you make it. Keep coming back. One day at a time. In other words, do the behaviors. You may not feel sober right now. But keep going. You may be cravings. You've quit whatever your drug of choice is, and you're craving it. Okay, one day at a time. Just do the behaviors. Fake it till you make it.
What's the next right thing? What's the
Do the
next
next
thing
right
I
thing.
have to
Yeah.
do? Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't want to do it, and it doesn't feel good to do
Yeah.
it, but I'm gonna do it anyway.
Yeah, because I know it's the healthy choice for me.
So I can change my thoughts, I can change the feelings, or I can change the behavior and affect the outcome.
Yeah, I think you can. It's just that you have to be aware that the hardest one to change is the feelings. And there's another old saying, feelings follow behavior. So know that if you change the behavior long enough, the feelings will eventually change. If I say, let's use the example of hungry, you say, well, I'm hungry. And I say, quit being hungry, Carla.
Right.
You can't, but what you can do, you can behave differently. You can either go out and get something to eat, or you can go get a big old thing, a drink of water. You can do some things to mitigate the hunger, but and that may change the feeling, but it's the behavior that leads to the
Changes the
change.
feeling.
The other thing you can do is you can work with the thinking, as we've illustrated tonight. So we'll come back and we'll talk about some rules of perspective to kind of wrap things up here on Strategies for Living, as we keep things in perspective. Little help from cognitive therapy this evening on Strategies. We'll be back.
I just died in your arms tonight. It must have been something you said.
Welcome back. Welcome back into Strategies for Living. I'm marriage and family therapist David McMillan, your PLPC Carla McCormick, and we are keeping things into perspective this evening. Little help from cognitive therapy is what we're getting here as we continue this week to talk about thoughts and feelings and emotions here on Strategies. So let's, if you're having problems can dominate our lives, right?
Yes.
And so, you know, you can find yourself kind of feeling like on the edge of a cliff, if you will, and we can get alarmed, we can get dispirited. So, you know, maybe to keep things in perspective, let's look at some rules. I like the 100-year rule. Ask yourself, is this going to matter 100 years from now? And you can even adapt that if you want.
I use the rule of fives.
Okay. Will it matter? Will I even remember this 5 years
5
from
minutes, 5 hours, 5 days, 5 weeks, 5 months, 5
Will,
years.
will either of us or any one of us remember what this problem was 5 years from now? You know, and it might even be worthy to ask 5 days from now, right?
Right.
Yeah. You know, the 100-year rule. You could also use the middle of the night rule. That wee hours of the morning when you're lying awake, you know, problems just assume this insurmountable proportion. And I can ask myself, well, in the cool light of day, is this going to look different? You know, when I'm putting it into the perspective of my life. There's the water under the bridge rule, or we could also call this the statute of limitations rule. You know, you may feel bad about some things that you did or things that you didn't do, and they trouble you long past the time when they need to. There's a statute of limitations, you know.
That should be the let it go rule.
Yeah, the let it go rule. Is there a statute of limitations beyond which, okay, I'm gonna make a choice here to let this go. So maybe those things can be kind of guidelines to help you keep things in perspective with a little help from Dr. Beck and Dr. Ellis. And thank you, Carla. You've done it again.
I love this show.
Yeah, and Ruben's done it again.
Yes, I have.
But he always does it. Folks, thank you. You've done it again. Thanks for listening to Strategies for Living. We've been presented by CADA and by Milestones Counseling Center, by Jerry Anderson State Farm Insurance, by Learning RX, by Highland Place Rehab and Nursing Center, by Resilient House, and by Jacob's Well, Inspirational Books and Gifts. If today were the last day of your life, you only had one more phone call to make, who would you call? What would you say? And why are you waiting? Make the call. For Reuben Wright and for PLPC Carla McCormick, I'm marriage and family therapist David McMillan, and we'll see you next time right here on Strategies for Living.
FM and 710 KEEL, KEEL, Shreveport.